index.html, physical path, and then blah, 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 blah. So it's showing that relationship between the path in the URL and the path on the disk. Okay. All right. So in this case here, though, when I go to slash, I'm still getting that.
But once if I want...
well, what about I want the default document? Like,
yeah.
You know how you hit slash, you would expect index.html or, I don't know, default.
Yeah, or home.
Yeah, home, whatever. Some default file that gets served up when you hit slash.
Yeah.
Okay. So static files middleware includes a bunch of stuff. And I remember when we were going around down here in use, there was other stuff.
I saw something like default files and...
Yeah, use default files. I saw use file server. And look at this one here. See how I'm hovering and we get that instructions like you said. Enable all static file middleware except directory browsing. So let's try use file server instead of use static files. So we're going to get a little bit more functionality. And let's see if this works. And I'm going to switch it. We're going to stay on Kestrel, and we'll hit Control F5. There we go. So look here. Is that index? No, yeah, see?
It's still, so it went directly.
Right, so that became our default document. Okay. If the file exists, it uses it, otherwise it doesn't. Okay. But what if I didn't want that? What if I call this application, let's call index like foo. And let me get rid of this. I'm just going to comment that out. Let's run this again. So there's a 404, right? Couldn't find it because we named it
foo.
Foo. But when I go to the default, I'm getting
an error.
An error. Maybe I would want a list of what's in that folder, like a directory.
The directory of what exists.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can even put some files in there. See if we can get one of those files served. I want to see if it does PNGs also. It does.
It does, okay.
Okay. So I want to see a listing
of all the things that exist in your directory.
Mm-hmm. So remember when we said use file server, it said enable all middleware except directory browsing.
Okay.
That means there must be directory browsing up there. There we go. Okay. Use directory browser.
Oh.
Okay. Enable directory browsing on the current path. And then there's optional
of what you can
options you can pass in. Okay. Now let's see if that's the magic bullet that will make everything okay. All right. Or something horrible will happen and things will blow up. All right. Things are blowing up. Let's find out why. Unable to resolve service for HTML encoder while attempting to activate directory browser middleware. So it wanted something while it was doing something else.
Okay.
What do we think is going on? What do you think?
Well,
when you want to make a directory browser page, I'm imagining that it's going to have to go through all the files and build some HTML up and make a table.
Yes. But where does that come from? Where does that page come from?
Well, somebody had to write that. And it said that it needed to have middleware to do that. And the middleware probably needed some functions.
Like some sort of service.
Some sort of service that was available. And in this case here, if you remember, it actually said something very specific that was interesting. It said, unable to resolve service HTML encoder. So the one service needed the other service. Did we set something up incorrectly?
Or did we miss something?
Mm-hmm. So remember there's configure where we build up our app. Our apps use services that they pull from all over.
The place.
But services have services that they use. So for example, this middleware directory browser has a service and some internal stuff that it needs in order to make HTML. So up here, when we say services,
Add directory browser.
yeah. So what this does is it says,
Does it have options?
adds the directory browser middleware services. It's basically saying these are all the things that are needed. And in fact, if I want to be really fancy, we can go up and look at like GitHub and look at the ASP.NET static files middleware. You can go and do this. This is what's great about open source now, right? We can go and find the code and find the function that does add directory browser and figure out what's going on.
What's
you can
in there.
read this code. So it turns out that some services, like directory browser, need others, like how to make HTML. Yeah.
So we have the things that build our application, but then they also need services for them to actually just function.
And a low-level service might be something like making HTML, or it might be something higher level, like how to use cookies or whatever. And we'll learn more about that when we make custom middleware. So let's run this now and see if it works. All right, look at that.
So it does work, and even has a timestamp.
That's fancy. So it basically, somewhere there's some code that went and for each file in the directory.
Do this. So that means when I look at things like this, it looks like something I could possibly make.
That's a really good point. We could probably go so far as to find that static file middleware and figure out who wrote it and write our own. So for example, here we go, directory browser, directory HTML directory formatter. Look at that.
There it is.
There it is. There is. Yep, look, somebody had to make a table.
So it's not magic.
Nothing in .NET is magic. It may have been in the past, where this idea of this black box that you poke at, but you can't open and look inside. But here you can.
And then every single thing that we've put into our application, we've actually built up. It's all pieces that we're bringing together like a puzzle.
Exactly right. And if you don't have those pieces, it either won't compile or won't run. And you have complete and total power. So notice that we couldn't serve static files unless we said it was okay.
Okay.
We couldn't make a directory browser unless we said it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's a big deal.
But one thing I've noticed when you go back to the command line, if you bring it up,
Oh, when I run that app?
when you run the
Run it
application, is that there's always a thing of the hosting environment is development.
Yes, it's saying right before it starts the app. You notice that here's where the app starts, but there's a little bit of setup, yeah. So you've noticed that hosting environment development has come up.
Has come up every single time we're running an application.
Indeed. And you mentioned before this piece of middleware that only happens in
Development.
development. Yeah, interesting. In fact, that's a piece of middleware, and that's a piece of middleware as well. And if we go, let's go ahead and remove that, and let's go back to our hello world. So there's hello Kestrel. Oops. And let's run that again just to make sure that that works, and it'll still say development. Okay? So remember before you had me go to properties.
Yeah. There it is.
All right.
It's the environment variable.
So let's change it to something else. What do you want to change it to?
Production.
Okay, production. And then I'll hit save. Oh, interesting. Look at this. It says this file, launch settings, has changed. That's because we happen to have it open. Yeah. So look.
So if I go to launch settings, it should.
Ah, this is really interesting. Look at this.
So I have two.
We did something funny. We made Kestrel production and IIS development. Maybe we do that the opposite way, right?
Okay.
But that's fine.
Why did that happen?
Well, so we changed the properties for the current web server, or the current launch options. So we have this, these are called profiles. We have this one selected. So when we looked at the properties page, we were changing it for that one. If we switch it to IIS Express, and then go back here, and then go Properties.
Could you go and click on the profile at the...
Yeah, hang on. Hit Properties. Now it says Development. Okay, because this is IIS Express profile. And if you look right here, you can switch it as well.
Right there.
See? Production, Development. Okay, so what? What do you do with that? Why do we care?
Why is this important?
What do you think?
Well,
Go ahead.
So when I think about it, it's basically when you're kind of testing an application, wouldn't you want to test some things in development?
Exactly. So you're going to want a developer exception page. You're going to want details about why a crash happened.
Why a crash happened. So a lot of testing. But then we also have the concept of staging.
Yeah. So some people might have something simplistic, like I'm a one-person shop. I've got development and production.
That's it.
But if I'm a big company, I might have dev, test, staging, production. I don't know. They could have many
different.
I suppose, what if we did this? I don't even know if this is possible. What if we just said down here where it says environment fancy production? Why not, right?
Yep.
That could be a thing. Because I might have multiple clouds or multiple web servers. Yep, see? Fancy production. So it looks like hosting environment really is up to you to decide.
It's up to you.
Okay. But we think of some of them. Let's go ahead and back to say development. Some of them matter. That's going to keep bothering me until I close that file. There we go. See this environment here, this hosting environment?
Yep.
So dev, production, and staging are kind of official.
Official things. Okay.
But remember how we said that there's no magic? We could probably go over into the source code.
And add one of our own?
Well, we could add one of our own to our own application. We could just make the changes ourselves or look ourselves. But what we could also do is if we had a question about like what is development is, like maybe that's complicated or fancy. It's actually not. It's probably just...
That's it.
You know what I mean? It's just a check to see the text about development. But it's convenient, right? So in this case here, we're saying if the environment is development, do this. Let's try something else.
So print it out onto a web page?
Well, let's do two things.
Okay.
First, let's do the stupidest thing I can think of, which is if it's development, do this. This is horrible, by the way.
Okay.
And you're going to show me a better way, because this is bad. All right? So if it's development, do that. Otherwise, it's do that. That's pretty horrible. Okay. All right.
All right.
So that works. But your face kind of squinched up.
I feel like there could be a nicer way to look at this.
It's okay. I don't feel bad. You can insult my code. What's a nicer way to maybe do that?
So I kind of thinking when you introduced us to the $ earlier.
Ah, yes, having strings that have stuff within the string.
Within the string. So could we theoretically, in response.writeAsync, could I write something like $ quotes?
Okay, so there's $, and then you're going to have a variable here somewhere. Where is the name of the current environment living? Where is that available to us?
Oh, we need to create an environment name.
Well, we have the iHosting environment, right?
But in iHosting environment, if you have dot, there should be an option that is...
So that's a good point. So you can do two things. You can say env dot, and you can ask questions.
Like,
you can also right-click on any one of the things you want to ask a question of, and you can say go to definition, and you can see
all the strings.
Look, see, it actually kind of auto-generates this. So I'll do that again just to make sure you're clear.
Yeah, let's look at that again.
Anything here that's blue, right? That's an interface that we know about. I can right-click on it, and I can say
go to definition.
Go to definition, and it tells me that there's the name of the application, the root path and the environment name.
So it shows you everything that exists within this.
That's exactly what you would see when you go env, except the extensions. You see how is development and those things didn't pop in?
Yeah.
They are extension methods. They're helper functions. They're not part of the interface.
Okay.
Ah, okay. All right. So env has what we need. Let's grab it. We thought environment name?
Yeah, environment name.
Okay.
And let's see if that works.
Should. Crossing fingers. Compile and run. There you go. And to prove that it works,
I'm going to change the environment.
make it fancy production again, because I think I like the idea of having one called fancy production. Yeah, I know.
There.
So we could do all sorts of things with that now. Now that we can have our application do different stuff based on being in production versus in development or staging. For example, imagine if you were making a shopping cart and you wanted debug information, it could appear at the bottom of the page. It tells you about the shopping cart, but only in development.
Only in development.
Right, because you wouldn't want to have people see.
No, you wouldn't want them to see that. You wouldn't want to see them. You wouldn't want them to see that something's out of stock.
Yeah, but you might want to keep that information secretly to yourself.
To yourself.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
All right. So that's the basics of environments.
Middleware.
Yeah, small amount of middleware. We'll do custom middleware in a little bit.
And we did have a look at ASP.NET Core.
And then we will come back in a moment and talk a little bit more about the configuration system.
All right, looking forward to it. So we've had a look at middleware, we've looked at changing environments, but whenever you're building an application, there has to be some sort of configuration that's happening in the background. And there are different ways you can do that, right?
Yep.
So some of the ways I've heard people doing it is through databases in the past. Is that right?
Configuration information that lives in your database. Yeah.
And sometimes people do it in JSON as well. So what is the way that people typically do it in an application like this?
Well, so in the old days in ASP.NET, we would go into the web.config and there'd be some name value pairs.
Okay.
But now you want to have a lot more choice. You want to be able to pick where your configuration goes. People usually like to put it into a JSON file of some kind.
But this will be a separate, so in our project JSON, do we have a dependency that is already in there for configuration?
No, we don't. That's a good point. So remember, we had to go and add static files in order to serve static files. We'll need to go and bring in a configuration management system that's built into ASP.NET and opt into that. So we can do it by editing project.json, but I'm going to try to be visual, and I'm going to go into the NuGet packages area here and hit browse, and I'm going to go and look for
configuration.
And
anyone can write a NuGet package, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So NuGet is at nuget.org, and you can go and submit your packages, and you can, open source projects can put their stuff up there. And when we search this, we're not just seeing Microsoft stuff. We are seeing all stuff. So you got to think about that when you look for things. Now, here we've got configuration.json. I want to get that one because I'm going to use JavaScript for my configuration.
Okay.
So we'll hit.
But if you weren't using JavaScript, you'd use something else.
I might use an ini file or XML or write my own configuration manager. And we see over here that's showing up. It just showed up. You see how it's a tree, in fact. So configurations.json required configuration, required a JSON library, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't have to think about that, though. I just said I wanted JSON configuration, and the whole tree came in.
Okay, brings everything you need.
Exactly. All of the dependencies that you need. And you only see one dependency added to the project.json. All right? Cool. So in our startup, which is kind of like the beginning of our application, okay, we're going to add a configuration object, and we're going to add it as a field. We're going to say public I configuration root. Configuration root. And you'll notice that it squiggles.
Yeah.
Okay, that's because it doesn't know where it's coming from yet. And there's a great little feature with Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Code does it as well.
The light bulb.
And the light bulb.
Yeah, I love the light bulb.
Here it says, did you mean that? Using Microsoft.extensions.configuration. And it'll actually tell me what it'll do to fix that. So I just clicked it.
It also shows you the potential, what it would look like, right?
Exactly. So here,
it's still grayed out though.
Well, it's grayed out because it thinks it's not necessary because I haven't done anything with it. See, it says using is unnecessary. Good eye. In fact, it is necessary because I'm going to eventually need one called configuration. And I'm going to say get set. So now I have a property here. And now, of course, this is no longer grayed out. So our configuration system lives inside of that root object. Now, just like we built up our application, we need to build up our configuration. And we're going to do that inside of the constructor of startup. So this is the constructor that runs when startup gets made. All right. Configuration, new. Remember App Builder?
Yep.
There is
Configuration Builder?
Configuration Builder, exactly. And it gets built up with that multi-line process there. And you see how we have add?
Yeah.
Check this out. Environment variables can be a piece of configuration as well. And here, add JSON file. Remember that little arrow there means extension method. That got added. So let's add a JSON file, and we'll just name it app settings.json. It doesn't have to be that. It can be
anything.
And as with all builders, at the end you say build.
Put it all together.
Okay. That put this configuration object, and that basically constructs it, and it now lives on that field. Okay.
So one thing I've noticed, we have an app settings JSON file.
Do we?
No, I'm saying you've made one.
I've said that there should be one.
Oh, so they should be one.
Well, that's a good point, actually. We should run it and see what happens if there
Let's
isn't.
have a look at what happens if it doesn't.
No, that's a good point. So let's run that and see what happens. Probably chaos.
Did you break .NET?
Yeah. No, I didn't break .NET. Just, I broke inside of a constructor. So you see how .NET crashed right there?
Yeah.
It's because I tried to go and do something in a constructor. I have no exception handler. I have nothing saving me from that. So it's unable to recover. Look, it is not optional.
Because it's there.
Configure, so file not found. All right. Now, of course, I could put in code to see if it was there or not, but let's go and say add, new item, make some JavaScript.
No, it's a JSON.
Well, there's JSON schema, but JavaScript file is a JSON file.
Okay.
So I'm going to say app settings.json. I just need that to get started. Ultimately, it's a blank file anyway. So then we say, remember it's name value pairs?
Yep.
All right. We'll say message colon hello from configuration. Nice and simple.
Nice and simple.
Should that work?
Let's give it a try.
That is the way. Oh. Nope, still can't find it. Was not found. Well, we didn't really tell it where to look. We made kind of an assumption.
So we have to add some sort of hosting environment?
Well, that's a good point. So the hosting environment, if you remember back over here, we said use content root. We told it about where to look. And inside of
our configuration builder,
we need to tell it where to look. But see this hosting environment here? Hosting environment, when we say env dot, has this root path.
Okay.
That's where we want it to go and look. So here's where things get a little interesting. And I think this is really a little confusing. But if you get this, then you're really going to understand how it all fits together. So check this out. So you say configuration builder. And before you add the JSON file, we're going to say set base path. So then the question is, where's the path? Remember I said before, it's on env. It was env dot content root path, right? Okay. That says, look there. Why is env squiggled? It does not exist in current content. Current context. what context are we in here? This is a constructor for startup. We're not in the configure method.
Yeah.
So how do I get one of these hosting environments? Any thoughts?
You're in your hosting environment.
Now we are in our startup class right now. What we want is inside the hosting environment. We're going to talk more about this in the intermediate part of the course, but this is a dependency that we need.
So we need to inject something in there?
We need them to inject it for us. So we're going to say, hey, we're going to declare, we need an iHosting environment. And anything that we declare, if I said I need a new foo called foo, it's going to go and say, I have no idea what foo is because you never told me about it. Yeah, no. But it does know about iHosting environment. Okay? And it's going to make a new one for me. It's going to inject it. And during the dependency injection part of the talk,
we're going to focus on something like this?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So let's try this one. And if it doesn't crash, it's success. That's my new minimum bar. All right. So here, it did not crash. We didn't do anything with it, though.
So that, do I know, where is that coming from?
Where's the hello world?
Yeah, so it's coming back from our original.
Yep, nothing's changed. That was our stuff here. But what we could do, if we wanted to, is we could put a breakpoint there.
And see what.
Do some interactive debugging. So instead of pushing F5, Control F5, I'm going to click this button here. We're going to start a debug session. There we go. So we just broke, not broke in a I'm broken way, but broke in a we are paused kind of way, and we're sitting right here. You see how configuration is null? All right? We're going to step over. There's a debug toolbar we can use there. Step over. And now I'm going to hover over the configuration. And now it's got that provider inside it, and I can dig around looking for stuff. And look. Oops. Let me do that again. Sometimes you got to dig for these things. Data. Hello configuration. So we know that it found the file because it didn't crash.
Crash, yeah.
And we know that it found the message because we can see it there. Now before, you had me doing the cool strings stuff in C# like this, right? We should be able to do that with
the configuration
as well. Okay. Hello from configuration. Hello in production. It's something, and then I don't know, configuration, right?
Yeah.
So what do?
Dot.
I'll say configuration. That's the name of our property. And I think it was called message.
The one in the app setting? Yes.
Uh-huh. We can go and check.
We can go cross-check that.
Mm-hmm. Message, hello from configuration. So we're pulling it out of this bag here. Yep, I can't go on multiple lines in that particular string. All right. Do you think that's going to work?
I hope so. I trust you.
You trust me?
I trust you.
I don't think so. Let's find out. Maybe it will. I'll be impressed if we pull it off on the first try. It works.
It worked.
All right. So which configuration object is this? Remember? That there. If you ever wonder, like, where is that coming from? Right-click, go to definition. It's that one. So let's just walk through this briefly from top to bottom. When our application starts up, the constructor is created, and ASP.NET and .NET looks at this and says, iHosting environment, I didn't know that they needed one of those, and it makes one. Or it pulls it out of its list of services. That's an example of a service that I needed. Here we're going to go and make our configuration builder. We told it where the files are, and this is really cool because we could put that file anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the root path.
It doesn't have to? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Then that loads the config. And then later on, when our application goes running, it's sitting inside of that variable.
Role configuration.
Because we set it right there, and it's public, and it sits in startup. And then we could go and grab configuration builders elsewhere in our application if we wanted to share it and get config from other places. Cool. So in this case now, we've got an environment name and configuration both in our little Hello World app.
And I could also create an appsetting.xml
Yep.
as well?
So in this case, we went and made a JSON file, but there are XML configuration managers. There's an INI file, which is just like a YAML. It's like
Okay.
name value pairs.